Oh, that's why. Uh, it's Friday though, right? You have an
It
early
is.
meeting so people can get out early.
Yeah, yeah. This guy that was telling me that it's a new tax process, and he said it used to be, a low percentage of his business, but now because of a quick change in the law, it's front and center, and he's got
Oh
all these
yeah.
people working 7 days a week, and
Oh
their
no.
first meeting is 5 a.m.
Oh,
My God.
that sounds brutal, doesn't it? Oh man.
Absolutely. All righty. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's do this official like.
I'm quick trying to find my.
Couple of these items I just found yesterday. Just catching up on the news.
Yeah.
All right, let's get rolling. We're at the top of the hour. We've got busy days.
That's right.
Welcome, everyone, to the Gray Paper Podcast. I'm Mike Carlson. I'm the researcher and owner of Gray Paper Legal.
Hi, I'm Karen Westwood. I'm director of the Law Library at Hennepin County Law Library. I'm quick trying to find an example of my question
Oh,
of
good,
the
good.
week,
Yeah.
but I'll
Did you
I'll
have
come
some
up
good
with.
ones this week?
No, I didn't actually. Well, I say that every week, don't I, Mike? And then
Yeah.
you always
I
find
know. Yeah.
something
And then it's like,
interesting.
oh, no, actually, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, my question this week, I it kind of came out of last week's question. I was talking with a couple of colleagues then about, Amjur proof of facts and Amjur trials and causes of
Yeah.
action and so forth. And somehow that led us to talk about words and phrases and how that is a title. Looks like I pulled the wrong thing. That's why it's not working for me. Um, we're still keeping words and phrases up to date.
Print version?
Because my colleagues in print, because my colleagues say it doesn't operate the same way online as it does.
Really?
Yeah. So I came rushing in this morning. I grabbed a couple volumes off the shelf and I realized I grabbed CJS, not words and phrases, but I did grab the words and phrases from Minnesota Digest. And
Oh, that's interesting.
they're convinced that you'll get a different number of results at least nationally, using words and phrases than what you'll see in the books. I don't understand how that can be true, but they're convinced. So I was going to just grab one and test it. But I grabbed the wrong volume. I do have words and phrases from Minnesota.
Yeah, let's try an example.
So let's look up racketeering.
Well, let's see. Racketeering, is that I'd
Yep,
be
yep.
surprised.
And try checking it just for Minnesota.
Oh yeah,
Or I suppose it would be Minnesota and federal.
I get quite a few, don't I? Let's see. Filters. So we do Minnesota. I've got one Supreme Court
One.
case.
Okay. Yep. So that's consistent. There's just one here
Yeah.
in print. Yeah.
It's not surprising to me. I mean, racketeering, as you can see here, pattern of
Mhm.
racketeering activity. I wonder if I force this into quotes. I've been wondering about this. We've talked about words and phrases here before. And I think, yeah, it doesn't force it to search that term only. One of my frustrations doing this electronically is that the phrase appears within a phrase, or the term
I
appears within
see.
a
The term,
phrase. Yeah.
and
Um,
that's why you would get more, because in print, it's gonna put racketeering as an entry alone, and then that's followed by a different case that talks about racketeering activity, and it's
Does-
defining that as a phrase.
does the print version also deliver statutory definitions?
Yeah, I mean, racketeering, this one, well, I guess it's a Minnesota Supreme Court case, but it definitely includes the statute. I'm not sure if it's like in a list of definitions in the statutes, if it produces that standing alone, or if it's just cases. But like
But does it
here,
look, because when you run this search on Westlaw, it's
yeah.
searching for the definitions section of statutes
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
No, I see. So that would be another reason that you would end up with more results.
Different
But here
results.
in the print, just for Minnesota, there's one entry for racketeering, and then there's racketeering activities in the plural. That's a different case. And then there's racketeering activity in the singular that lists
Yeah.
2 more cases.
I know in
So-
Westlaw, the singular will deliver the plural, even if it's
Sure. So I bet that's what the difference is, right? The
yeah.
reason you get more results is you get any statutory definition plus both singular and, well, and the word within a larger phrase.
Yeah.
Except that didn't happen, Mike. Because look at Minnesota. If you just put racketeering in and we looked for Minnesota, there was only 1 case listed.
Let's see.
So it didn't pick up racketeering activity, did it?
Oh no, but that's in the digest.
Yeah, this is what I'm using, the words and phrases volume from the digest.
Nice.
We are going super old school
I
here.
love, yeah. So that's the state and federal that actually delivers 18. And I get racketeering activity. Do I need to find what the
yeah,
Minnesota?
let's just do state. Yeah.
So the Supreme Court case is from 1994,
Yep.
and
That's that case, but it didn't pull up the racketeering activity. Oh, no, that's District of Minnesota. Okay, so this is pulling state and federal,
federal. Yeah.
but the numbers don't match up. Mike. Oh, wait,
So,
let me check the pocket part because I have
who's
to
got
do
more? Oh, yeah. Oh, well, of
online
course.
has part, but let's see if there's something in the pocket part. For younger folks, they won't even know what I'm talking
What a
about.
pocket part is. I know.
Exactly.
I had
No,
some
it only-
family
yeah.
coming in from out of town, and they went to the history museum, and they saw the mining exhibit, and then they talked
yeah.
a lot about the Peanuts exhibit.
Oh,
And
sure.
I said, I don't know that my niece, who is 10, who loves graphic novels, would know what a syndicated cartoon even is.
Oh,
So
I
it's
know.
perfect for historical.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember my parents hitting an age where they're like, wait, now things we used are antiques.
Oh no.
Yeah, what we remember. Yeah, so in the pocket part, there's just 1 entry. It's the 2018 case that is under the term racketeering activity. So in total, this hasn't been updated in a year or 2, but so in total, any phrase with racketeering in it results in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cases, and Westlaw pulls up 18.
18,
So
yeah.
why the discrepancy? That's a big
Yeah,
discrepancy.
It is, and it looks like you said it hasn't been updated in a year, so that's 2.
No, it hasn't been updated yet since 21, so that accounts for 2 additional cases. So we're up to 7, possibly 9.
And let's see, let's go back to
But that's,
jurisdiction.
you're
So let me
still,
make
yeah,
sure. Well, and then so 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, I guess, and 1 Supreme Court. So you could, I'm guessing the Supreme Court, I don't know how that volume is organized, if Supreme Court would fall within Minnesota materials.
it probably wouldn't.
And
What
then 8th
about,
Circuit could be from other district courts. So there's 4 from the U.S. District Court of Minnesota and 1 from state Supreme Court. So that's 5.
yeah,
And then let's see. Let's
so
take a
it
look at
is including the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, but the Minnesota Digest words and phrases must not be including that,
the 8th Circuit.
right? Because I don't see that, well, I don't see that case because it's too new.
Oh yeah.
But like US v. MacArthur, I don't see here. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's a
there's a
23.
jurisdictional reason.
Here's
Yeah,
a case from August 9th of this year in here.
right, right. Well, okay, so it's a little deep in the weeds, but I could not figure
Yeah,
out
that's why we're
it would
here.
be, I know, why would it be different online? So you
Yeah.
just really have to pay attention to the jurisdiction. And we could have gotten rid of those Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals if we wanted to, just by selecting the other jurisdictions. All right, I'll report back to my staff.
Yeah.
But you know, for our observers who aren't familiar with words and phrases, it's my understanding that the difference between words and phrases and just searching for a term is words and phrases brings up cases that actually define the word or the phrase in the case. And that, do you think there's an AI way to do that? In the past, attorney editors had to look, and determine if a phrase was being used or if it was being defined, right?
Yeah, it is a editorial enhancement that we'll see the term highlighted here in the head note. As an alternative, often what I've done is run the term just in the head note itself, because it is an editorial enhancement and maybe it didn't get flagged, or it could be it's kind of a subjective thing. I think, is this truly
Right.
defining the term?
Right.
Most of the words and phrases documents, it's clearly, using those quotes around the term. It clearly is a definition. And then I've done something like define, means, construed, use a whole variation of those terms defined, mean. And sometimes that's worth doing, if it's a trial court order, or something like that, that doesn't typically get the full editorial treatment, but may be helpful to find a citation to something else. I've done that as well.
Right, and then you don't use any of those field restrictors, right? Because the trial court documents don't have head notes or those other fields. Yeah,
just a straight up Boolean style keyword search.
Yep.
That works pretty well. The AI side, sure. If you said, give me cases defining the term racketeering,
right.
I've got
Minnesota, and yeah.
I don't know if I have permission. I've got an AI tool up here that
oh yeah.
You know what? I'm going to pause I'm going to stop the share for a second here. Let's see.
Oh, he's going to run it. Well, I expound on the beauty of an actual definition in a case. And wouldn't it be fabulous if all judges used the same construct and said something like, in this jurisdiction, this term has the following meaning or is defined as follows, and use the common, some kind of shared language to identify that. But that's where the enhancements, of course, really carried so much weight over the years. So
yeah, I mean,
here in the law library, we love words and phrases. It's such an important way for attorneys to understand what's going on with their topic. That's a common question we get at the reference desk especially from attorneys who remember using it in print. They'll call and say, hey, will you run this phrase through words and phrases, or look this up and see what you find.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
The tool I'm testing right now isn't suited for that purpose necessarily. It doesn't deliver results that way.
Yeah.
It had interesting result, but
Well, I wonder if the large vendors aren't using some version of AI as a first pass to pull up, maybe some of the most obvious cases and give the attorney editors a jump start on some of that.
yeah,
There's got to be those efficiencies being built in, don't you think?
yeah, absolutely.
So
That's what I
those
said.
of us who are like, I don't use AI, we're just kidding ourselves because it's
That's
being
right.
used.
Well,
in
we're
the
using
products that
natural
we use.
language. Yeah.
That's right.
Let's see what the natural language looks like on which no longer qualifies as AI, I suppose, at least in
I
our
suppose, yeah.
adult brains. But let's see, how would I prompt that actually in a natural? I'm not even sure. I'm so
Yeah.
used to using ChatGPT now, and these I'm trying to write a prompt, not an
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Define. Oh yeah, boy, 1,000
And this is
cases.
a Westlaw tool here. So some of these questions are already baked in, and it's giving me
Sure.
results that way. So yeah, that but that oftentimes I do skip. I'll jump right into words and phrases. This is a perfectly reasonable way to do this on Westlaw now.
Yeah.
The reference attorneys in my day would often skip the natural language. We'd been trained on Boolean, and we knew the structure of the documents, and we dive
Right.
deep into these. Probably wasted a lot of time oftentimes because the natural language processing isn't too bad.
Yeah.
can,
Yep. Right. And you get a bunch of results, but you get 851 secondary sources. So if
yeah,
and 1,100 practical law entries. So if you're just, well, I don't know, I guess you do still have 1,000 cases, but you could limit by jurisdiction and so forth there too.
I've had quite a bit of luck with these asking these questions.
Mhm.
There are a lot of them baked in, and I actually technically not sure how this works in Westlaw, but I've had a lot of luck
Mhm.
asking some of these basic questions and then getting answers. They're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really good starting point. That's why I was the news this week was that the Casetext Thomson Reuters
Yes.
deal was finalized. That's a done deal. And
Well done. Yeah.
and I continue to be excited to see what they build there. I'm super happy about that. I know not everyone is sort of feel like the merger is going to kill the old product, and when are we ever going to see it? And but I'm just not a person who's going to buy 12 different
Right.
tools. I just can't afford it, right? I'll jump into Westlaw, and if they've got the technology and I'll use that, and quite excited to see that's because that's already
Yep.
where I live, that they're
Yep.
adopting that. I'll spend a little more rather than a whole lot more to get the additional
Right.
tool.
Right. Yeah.
The natural language here, even without Casetext, I mean, that works pretty darn well. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the 86th head note. That's a big case.
Yeah, that's one of those cases I would have gone out of my way to try not to have to read. Anything with that many head notes, I don't, it
Oh
seems
my
too
gosh.
complicated.
This one's 105 pages long.
Yeah. Oh, ouch.
But
Yep. Yeah. So you were interested in some of these announcements that you were reading about, AI related.
I had well, my interesting legal research questions. I'm doing a lot of testing on these AI tools, and it's been a lot of fun. It's interesting to see the problems that folks are trying to solve. I'm oftentimes given the prompt and then asked to solve that in, Westlaw, and then compare it to what's happening on the AI tool. And we talked a little bit about currency on one of these a little while ago, where the bill was sitting, on the governor's desk, right? And the corpus that the search is running on is, case law, statutory law, and
Right.
unless it's got that legislative history, it's not going to know, or access to news, right? Because sometimes the good legal information isn't even coming from a legal source even.
Right.
So unless you have that, you're not able to deliver, actionable intelligence. So some of it just has to do with the availability of resources. What's it
Right.
looking within?
Right.
But it's interesting to see that those kinds of challenges, and again, that's why having case text as one element of a broader tool just seems to be the right approach to me.
Yeah.
Because it's got access to different kinds of resources. The other couple of other interesting challenges that popped up this week were, there was one prompt for very, very broad prompt. So like, well, what do you really need to know and why are you asking the question kind of problem, right? So the prompt was had to do with exempt employees. Is it an exempt employee, and what's the effect on having to pay overtime? Well,
Sure.
that can be a very short answer. It can be an
Yeah.
answer that says, well, if you're exempt, you don't have to pay overtime. Done. Right.
Yeah.
But like, what do you, so it's only the kind of thing that needs to trigger, well, why are you, another question, right? That as trying to come up with just the legal research side of that, and to summarize that in just a handful of words, takes me 3 hours, because who is exempt is subject to dozens of categories, and it's super complex. And so to find a way to summarize that in any meaningful way, beyond that short sentence that just says yes or no, very, very challenging. But what do we care about, right? I mean, why are you asking? If I know why you're asking the question or what the prompt means, but of course the AI doesn't know that. It's going to come up with a summary based on the way it's programmed to articulate a response, or however the tool is designed to deliver a response. So the chattiness of these AI tools makes sense, because it really the prompt demands some more clarification. And it's interesting to see whether or not these tools are going to be able to handle that kind of challenge. I don't know.
Because I feel like when we get that kind of question, usually from a non-attorney, like, do I have to pay an exempt employee overtime? The other part of that question is, and what are the ramifications if I misclassify someone as exempt? Like, that can't be your motive for classifying someone as exempt. I'll make them exempt so I don't have to pay them overtime. It's not going to fly anywhere. But that's kind of why people are asking the question. So the other answer is, here are the possible downsides of doing that improperly. Like, you're going to be in big trouble. You'll have some tax and other kinds of ramifications.
And that's the other piece of it. As I'm working through these solutions, like, well, how much further analysis should I be providing that's going to be instructive to the people who are asking me to do this kind of work? I mean, oftentimes I'm saying, well, I feel like this additional little piece of information, if for no other reason, it took me a long time to grab it, to say, but I think you need it. I have
Mhm.
taken that step out too. Like, well, actually, it's not responsive. It was just my own little rabbit hole that I went down, assuming that I know what the prompt intended, but
Yeah,
then changed my mind and say, actually, that's probably a bit of a stretch. But there's a lot of that. What you should look into next is X, Y, or Z. This is something that, I'm including in what should have been a part of the response, because it's the
right,
logical next step.
right,
It's responsive, and if they don't have this information, it's it
right,
likely leaving them without the full picture, which is
right.
dangerous, super dangerous. So it's
This is what I would, maybe I already told you this. This is what I was telling my advanced legal research class that I taught this summer, that
yeah, yeah,
when I, talked with my colleagues, one of the things we think makes a good researcher is curiosity. And I feel like AI maybe isn't curious enough, right? It predicts an answer, but then it doesn't think, but I wonder, given that answer, like why? And take the next step to look further to try to figure that out. But I guess that's what the researcher does. Mike, are you doing these evaluations like at the request of someone or just for your own curiosity?
at the request. So yeah, yeah, and
Gotcha. Yeah.
essentially, um, working myself out of a job, maybe on that is the idea here, right? But yeah. So I mean, there are people are building like crazy. We talked to the gentleman from MidPage not so long
Right.
ago. Others out there who are building around the available AI right now, and there was a term. There was I'll try to find that. I think we mentioned it in a prior article. There was a hard fork was the name of the podcast, and there's a term for what I'm doing right now. I can't remember what it was, but I'll have to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Part of the training of these AIs, the human element, me,
Sure.
that work has got a term of art now, and I can't remember what it is. But
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Yep.
I'll have to
I'll
go
have to
back
throw
to
it in the show notes. Yeah.
the podcast. Yeah, that'll go in the show notes. Maybe I'll throw that in the title. But yeah,
Well,
I
that's
think
great.
the curiosity piece is you just you don't know. One way to solve that problem is to embed it into a resource like Westlaw and make it one feature of many that you use.
Right.
Um, on the consumer end, though, where this can do a lot of good,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that it emulates curiosity in some fashion.
Right. Right. And I think,
Which is interesting too.
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever taken the ChatGPT survey, but it's interesting because it asks you when you're on ChatGPT, like what kind, how do you envision what this entity is? Is it a
Mhm.
cold scientist? I can't remember what the categories are, but
Yeah.
you give it some emotional intelligence by telling it how you
Oh,
want it to behave. Is it friendly? Is it
oh,
curse?
sure.
Is it we there's a lot. We were talking last week, I think, about being careful not to anthropomorphize the
Right.
the technology.
Yep.
Uh, but why would you do that? I mean, if it's a consumer level tool, you want it to demonstrate some courtesy, some emotional intelligence, wouldn't you?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, you would think, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And then it
Or
makes less work for you to modify your results, if it's already established a tone
that's
yeah,
right. That's right.
or a certain level of civility or politeness that you want. Yeah.
Or do we need to train the public to be sure that this is it's like media literacy, be careful about the tools that you
Right.
use to gather information.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. We always are looking for efficiency and thoroughness. And I'm a believer that if you rely just on one thing, you may be missing out. So if something's really important, be sure to try more than one way to get to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Or to produce it.
How did it go this summer with the students over at St. Thomas? You had a nice little group there.
Yeah, I had a little
Some are
group. I
doing
had
it.
7 students. Yep, it was the first time teaching Minnesota legal research over at St. Thomas Law School. So I was kind of developing a new course. The students were great, pretty engaged, even though up front, a couple of them admitted that they were only taking it because they needed a 1-credit class.
Yeah.
It's fine. But it's interesting to me, Mike, I think this is not earth-shaking for anyone who's taught, is I forget the things that we know as librarians and researchers that I assume everybody already knows. So I found myself starting a couple of steps in and forgetting to go back to the beginning. So at one point I did a little comparison, case law research, run the same query in Westlaw and Lexis and Google Scholar. This is a Susan Neville-Mart exercise that she proposes, part of one of her articles, and the point was to see how all of these services give you results in different orders. And so if you look at the first 10 results, maybe only 3 of the cases are the same across 3 services, and maybe 7 of them are relevant, and what are you missing and what can you gain? And so, I mean, it's really just to make students be aware that they might want to, use multiple ways to make sure they're getting the major cases, maybe some secondary sources or the brief of the opposing party or whatever it is. But what my students took away from it was, I had no idea you could find cases on Google Scholar.
Really?
Like, oh, shoot. I just thought, I don't know why I thought this, because why would they? When you go to law school, you're taught the major vendors. They'd only had first year, research and writing. And so I thought, oh yeah, there are a few things, so if I teach it again, I'll definitely go back and redo that. But the other thing, Mike, you and I have talked about this before, I think that made an impression on them was the volume of material in regulatory research, and how case research is super, but for many areas of law, you're going to be dwelling a lot in regulation, and just to understand how those regulations come to be, what a public hearing is about, how they're litigated, they're like, wow. So that was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this morning's call, the tax code suddenly comes up with a new thing, and there's a deadline, and it's just procedurally complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And
today's I'll work ahead of our typical order here and say that today's CLE is on the new cannabis legislation passed by the Minnesota legislature, and it's pretty far-reaching. It's a big change, and I think so. This year there's going to be a lot of talk about the legislation, and next year it's going to be regulatory, right? Because this stuff has to be implemented, and it's going to come through in regulations and local ordinances, and that's job security for you, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. That's where
Find
the
out
rubber
like
meets
how
the
is
road.
treating this, or whatever. It gets so local in a hurry. But yeah.
I before I ran out of time this morning, but I was part of this acquisition. Speaking of Google Scholar, right? There's have you messed around with this at all in Google Docs? Is this I forgot what they call this, but I can begin drafting using their Bard. I don't know what it's called in Google Docs, but I can begin drafting. What I meant to do was try racketeering. I don't. I would be surprised if this was connected to Google Scholar, and it's likely going to tell me I can't do it. But cases defining racketeering. say insert.
Like memo or, yeah,
Still, yeah, I can't
still
help with
learning.
that. It's not
Yeah.
connected. You know, but you can do.
At least it didn't make anything up, Mike.
I know. Yeah, yeah. New draft an intake form for, say, personal injury clients, and that'll get you started. I don't know how valuable this is, but yeah, before we call, because one of the things I was trying to catch up on was how these new AI tools are going to be used with Microsoft, with Word, and both.
Right.
Just announced this week a new. I've got lost. I mean, seems like Lexus is announcing a new integration with Word every month, and so I was trying to keep up with that. And the new case text tool is going to be integrated as well. And both Lexus and Westlaw have long had relationships and tools in Word where you draft with a a research service in the sidebar.
Yep. And that kind of
None of them
drafting
I have
system.
loved, but these new AI tools I'm kind of excited about. I think that's going to make my job much easier. So
Yep.
we can refine this. Let's elaborate. So you can. These are. I have not used these. Where my colleague Armin is building his document automation tool in Google for Google Docs. So it's just kind of fun to have that as a resource.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of eager to see how these are being built in Google Docs as well.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yep. Yeah, boy.
Before we jump today, I don't know if you had a chance I dropped this in our note late last night. Gene O'Grady's blog, and I'll drop this into the show notes as well, but talking about this judge from the Eastern District of North Carolina who said you have to stop using parties like, or services like Pacer Pro. Or Court Listener, or the recap service.
Really?
Any service that is ingesting this material from Pacer as a third party, and then the order is actually the second post here from August 16th this week. But a standing order from, what was the judge's name? Richard Myers the second.
Okay. Saying you can't use.
So he's specifically calling out Pacer Pro, Docker, Court Drive, and Recap. I thought, oh my God, how devastating would that be to be, one of these companies who's now this is the rule is users in this district. It's not applied to everyone, but the concern is because they're ingesting this material, making it available, like, Recap, for example, it's a great resource because you can, for free log in and then find a sample pleading from federal documents. Very nice resource, but the concern here is that it's violating, and we talked about this last week, violating the privacy and confidentiality concerns of folks. And
is that his concern? Yeah,
I believe it is. Gene O'Grady's point was that was probably human error, not a technological problem. That somebody is probably pushing through items which shouldn't have gone through, or weren't properly redacted, or who knows what. But yeah, it's funny that it's come to the attention of this court that certain registered users may be using third-party services to collect and organize case filings. So, these tools have been around for quite some time.
I was gonna say, when did this come to the attention of the court?
So I think it came to His Honor's attention because he probably got burned on a privacy issue. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know if Gene O'Grady has any additional information there either.
That is super interesting because I don't know. I feel like the only way the third party providers got it was from Pacer. So if it was out on Pacer, also private information that shouldn't be there, to your
I know.
point, the
Yeah.
problem doesn't seem to be with the third party. It would be with improper redacting, right? Is
That,
redaction a word?
yeah, no, yes, I think it is. Well, that was my thought as well. This is redistributing that work. I mean, I
Oh,
guess Pacer is free to use, but you're right,
well, if
and
they're not supposed to share Pacer credentials, I could see that.
yeah,
Is someone
right.
passing
I don't know.
along credentials for,
I'm sorry. Recap is free to use. Pacer, you have to pay
right?
for the downloads, typically, and security through, what is the phrase that Damien uses? Security through obscurity,
Oh, yeah,
because it's hard to
yeah,
use,
yep,
um,
yep,
hard to access, I suppose. But
right.
the
Well, I'll have
yeah,
to go back and read more about that. Yeah. Maybe someone was just sharing their Pacer password, but you don't have to share it. People can go in. It's a
yeah,
public
like
access
public access
to
to
court
court.
electronic,
What is the Pacer acronym? I always forget.
public access to court electronic records, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll have
Uh,
to read more closely, Mike. I didn't get a chance to look at it before, but yeah, see, I love Gino Grady's blog. And Bob Ambrogi finally came up with his blog post on AALL.
oh yeah.
Did you see that?
I don't think I did. What did
Yeah.
he have to say?
Well,
I've heard him chat about it a couple of times, but
yeah, I think he started out with like, man, it just wasn't the same this year. And I was talking with another law librarian. She was like, yeah, I saw it. I thought, I don't love this. But by the end, he said, I still think it's one of the best legal tech conferences and the librarians are on it. But he thought the librarians were kind of walking around a little bit uncertain about this generative AI and what it means for the
yeah,
profession.
yeah,
And I think there were a lot of sessions on that. And he said, the sessions just didn't have as much of the snap kind of and the excitement that he's seen at these annual meetings in the past. I think there was probably some truth to it. I think maybe he brought some of that himself, right? Aren't we
yeah,
all kind of bringing that? It sort of colors how we see things. There were some logistical issues. That convention center is enormous in Boston.
yeah.
And
They were talking about the vendor hall being just this cavern, and it was a little,
yeah, and yet somehow split between two sides. So
yeah.
like at the opening reception in the exhibit hall, I only went to half of the exhibit hall. I didn't realize there's a
Oh,
whole other half.
well,
The
that's
other
a
side.
problem.
It
I mean,
took me,
that is a flaw.
yeah, it took me a while. Maybe by the end I did find it, but I thought, man, this seems so small this year. And the organization can't
I didn't know
affect
that.
the
That's funny.
architecture, but yeah. So that was weird. Yeah.
It's funny. Part of me, I know that when I go to a conference, I like to be surprised by the big announcement.
Yeah.
That's always the fun.
Yeah.
What are these things for? I mean, you're connecting and learning, and sometimes it's just the work of being the professional that you are at these conferences. It's not always about a news event, and it's
Right.
it's
Right.
about learning and making those connections that you need to make in person,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
serendipitous
So,
meetings or whatever. I
yeah.
mean,
Well, the serendipitous meetings too, there's some comment on that. I was talking with a colleague from LA yesterday, and he said the whole conference, he would catch a glimpse of someone when he was going up the escalator and they were going down, and he'd say, "Hey, great to see you. We'll catch up." And he said, then I'd never see him again because, the conference center was so huge.
yeah.
So, I mean, there were just some logistical issues with it, but
These facilities are not, there is a design problem that can be solved there. I think that's the Clio Cloud Conference, another popular one. I enjoy it quite a bit. That place, that facility in Nashville is just gigantic, and
Really?
it,
Yeah.
it is, you know, I went to my hotel room, and they drew me a map, and I'm like, well, I kind of did that. All right, whatever. I should have been paying attention, right? Because
Yeah.
it took me like 15 minutes to find my
Yeah.
room. It was,
Yeah.
and then uh, and it's way outside of the downtown, and
Yeah.
um, so some of those connections. It's not a human-centered space. Oftentimes, you're
Right.
accommodating the masses, not the individuals. And I don't
Right.
know kind of what the design solution is for those kinds of things, but
Yeah.
um,
No, it's super
yeah,
interesting how that architecture definitely can affect your
yeah,
experience. So, yeah, next year will be in Chicago, I think just in a couple of really large hotels. So there won't be the
yeah,
big convention center experience. That can have its own challenges too, wandering around hotels,
yeah.
trying to find different rooms. But
And I
yeah,
hate those rooms. I mean, they're just such a dreary. I mean,
yeah,
I've not been to any conference. Well, no, that's not true. I've been to a couple of sunny rooms, I guess, in my time. But I
yeah,
don't. I mean, you've got to set up the technology so you can see the screen, so you can see the speaker and hear the speaker, and so you end up in these soulless, windowless
yeah.
ballrooms that are just divided up, and it's just
And
makes my
over air conditioned.
yeah, and it's cold,
So
and
you have to go
you know
outside to warm up. We're always
yeah.
in the middle of the summer, so that's a
Yeah,
real thing. The
Vegas
rest
is
of
my
my life.
favorite because it's these gigantic, divided up by these huge walls, and it's freezing,
Yeah,
and then you warm up, you go outside and it's 110 degrees.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
I don't know. I and these unconference ideas are kind of interesting,
yeah.
but often don't have the benefit of organization. You know,
Right,
I
right.
think, and
Yeah. Oh,
but
that's fun stuff. I went to a conference once at a hotel within the Disney resort,
oh, really?
and I signed up for it late in the game, so I couldn't stay at the hotel where the actual conference was held. So I was at a nearby hotel that I got to by boat. You
Oh,
know, Disney,
really?
one of those little ferries. It was,
Yeah.
I don't
Wow.
know, we weren't in the amusement park, but I'd come back after a late session on this boat and then walking to my room with It's a Small World piping out from behind the bushes. It was a very unusual conference experience. But yeah, but we digress, I guess, a little bit.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, we should do a conference. We should do a Great Paper conference.
We could, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be swell. But
Um,
so what do you
and
have coming up this week, Mike? Anything great?
what do I have coming up this week? I have a document automation CLE coming up next week. I have a class to prepare for over at Mitchell. With sort of related topics. We're talking about practice management platforms and
Oh, great. Yep,
process. So yeah, and some
yeah,
document automation.
yep,
So those are exciting new things. I'm
yeah.
traveling to San Diego at the end of the month also for a quick
Oh,
jaunt with my niece, and
oh, fun. Yeah.
yeah, madly
Well, I
preparing for
am.
them.
Last night I was at the 50th anniversary party for Neighborhood Justice Center. Are you familiar with them?
Yes. um they've been here at the center. They participated in some events for us here.
Oh, great. Yeah, they are a super interesting group. I didn't know much about them. They've been in St. Paul for 50 years, and they assist folks with criminal defense.
Hmm.
So folks, and they do a lot of education events. They're very connected with the community. They started out serving just Ramsey County. Now they provide service in Ramsey and I think Washington and Dakota or something. But because it was this anniversary party, they were reminiscing. And my gosh, Mike, the number of judges who have had experience either interning or working at the Neighborhood Justice Center is a
Really?
pretty impressive thing. Oh my gosh, Judge Michael Davis was
Oh,
an
yeah.
intern there back in the 70s. He spoke, and a couple of judges on the bench now, I think in Ramsey County. And then Jerry Blackwell was the keynote speaker. And, you know, I love those kinds of things, those celebratory look backs on,
Yeah.
you know, on people just really invested in making the justice system a better system. It's kind of inspiring, I have to say.
That's great. I was actually confusing them with another Minneapolis organization.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And, you know,
That's
as a
nice.
law librarian, I'm always trying to think about ways we can be connecting with the community,
Yeah.
you know, better. And they're pretty impressive over there in St. Paul on Laurel Avenue. So
Yeah.
anyone watching who's interested in learning about an inspiring legal nonprofit, and take a look at them.
So last night, yeah, August 17th, last night was their
Yep.
50th anniversary.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a nice event.
Yeah, great.
Yep. So that's where I'd leave us, inspired by
Yeah. And
decades of good work in St. Paul, building, you know, I think a lot of what they do is build trust and confidence in the system. And that's kind of priceless, right?
badly needed. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Any let's see if they've given us any items to share. This will be in the notes here in a few minutes as well. I'll get this up on the website. Anything else, Karen, you got coming up this week? You've got the cannabis CLE coming up this
Yep,
afternoon.
the CLE today. And I don't think anything big coming up in the next week. How about you? Oh, you already said you're
Yeah,
off
all of that stuff.
to teach,
All
and yep, that's great. Yep.
Karen, thanks again.
Thank you.
yeah,
Next
we-
Friday
we'll,
will be here before we know it. Yep.
I know. You have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye-bye.